The next commission in the studio is for some chaos mutations. Now, I know that many of you are excited because you've been asking for this for a long time, but I have not had an opportunity to do chaos mutations before, and so I wasn't really sure how to go about building a tutorial for something that I'm not real familiar with. This client asked if I was able to do it, and I said yes, of course, because I'm a professional. And when you are a professional commission artist, sometimes you lie and figure it out later. Anyways, let's learn how to do chaos mutations. So here you see a bunch of sticky notes with some pieces of Dreadnought on them. This client has labeled each piece meticulously and showed drawings and even set them up with sticky tack on how he wants them arranged. You see here we have mostly eyeballs and pustules and other grossness, and then a growth of a spike coming out of this leg. Now he was kind enough to provide little plastic balls here, right, which we will be using as the eye, but you could really just use a rolled up ball of green stuff if you're going to try this process at home. He has not removed all of the sprue, which aggravates my OCD, but maybe that just adds to the charm that he's going with this chaos build. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I have an idea that I want the eyeball to be sunk into the material a little bit. So we're going to just draw in, or we're going to do a little pilot hole. And then we'll get a larger drill bit. We're going to make this little divot here so that the ball has something to sit into. Because if I just try and glue this to this, there's only going to be a very, very small point of contact where this is actually going to adhere. But if I'm able to make a little pocket for it, then it will have more surface area for the glue to adhere. It'll also help the eyeball to sink into the material so it's not quite popping out so much. Being a little bit popped out and bulbous is probably, you know, a good look for chaos, but we're not wanting it hanging out. We want it just looking like a regular eye, right, on a knee pad. All right, let's take a look there. That's pretty good. We're going to go a little bit more. Remember that, just like in the battle damage video, the depth that you drill to with your small hole, with your pilot hole, controls the depth of the overall pocket, right? So if you drill really deep with your pilot hole, that's how deep your hole is going to be. The second drill is just really there to widen it. Oh, that's looking pretty good. And the way that I know that I'm to the depth and width that I need is if I can set that into the pocket and it doesn't shift around or move. It will stay by itself. That's pretty good. We'll go a little bit more. Now this is a problem. I drilled the holes actually too close. These eyeballs are going to be bumping into each other and I needed to spread those out a little bit more. So, you know, it's part of the learning process. Let's do a new hole down here maybe. Now, so far that's working out really well. I wish that the client had removed the mold lines like I requested, but I can remove those myself. This method seems to be great for countersinking the eyeball so it's not moving around. This is a great start. However, he also wants this eyeball on this helmet. All right, he wants it stuck on there like that. Here's the problem, all right? The helmet is round, and where the eyeball is going to meet the helmet is flat. right? Which means that you are only going to have a tiny, tiny little point of contact for that glue. That's no good. That means when we go to sculpt this, it's going to be teeter-tottering on either side. So we're going to need to drill it. So if you ever find yourself in this situation where you're not going to have that surface area, don't just pile a bunch of glue in there because it's probably not going to hold. Okay, you'll need to drill this. So let's find our knife here, sharp knife. And let's drill a hole on rounded surface areas. Carefully drill it with a sharp knife. Pilot hole, bigger hole, okay, and then find the center of your corresponding piece. This, normally I would cover this in resin so that I have a nice flat area to work with so I can find the exact center. This is very chopped up and very messy, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to drill. Yeah, see, look at this. If I were to drill into the center of this, you're not going to get a clean hole. All right, so this needs to be gap filled. So let's get our resin. We're going to fill up that hole, and then we're going to make a nice flat surface. Okay. And now we're going to file this so that it's nice and flat. See, now that we have a nice uniform flat back, we can also find our center a lot easier. That's pretty good right there. You can also draw it with a marker first if you need to eyeball it. Eyeball it. Now we can pose the eye just like we want, and then we will sculpt around that. Next, we're going to take some resin and just bulk out the base of these eyeballs. And what this is going to do is create a substructure so that we have something to sculpt on top of with our green put in the next section. We could just use green put. If you don't have any resin, you can just bulk this out with a layer of epoxy and just use green put. But then you have to wait for that to cure, which is a couple of hours. It's just faster to use a bit of resin. You see, it's just going to build this up a bit. We're going to do this for all of the eyeballs. So essentially what this is doing is, if this is the surface of our armor and this is our eyeball, the eyeball is sticking out quite a bit. By adding a bit of resin here, we can build up this area here, and then we'll sculpt some details on top with the epoxy. Now for the fun part, we're going to do some sculpting on these. Now, I was going to use the commission pieces for this next example, but they are kind of small and I want you to be able to see what I'm doing, and so I have actually built an eyeball right here. Same way, just mounted it up the same. You see the resin and all. I'm just going to take a little ball of green stuff, and I'm going to decide which way my eye is looking, and I'm going to plop it on there. Then I'm going to use a rigid conical brush, and I'm going to get a little bit of oil on it and just start polishing it in the direction I want my eyeball to be looking. Okay, I think I'm going to have it be right like that, kind of looking off to the side. I'm kind of thinking maybe like a Nurgle eye, right? It's a little bit big, so I'm going to trim it. Just get a little bit of oil on my knife blade, and I'm going to trim it. In fact, I might make it kind of an abstract shape instead of just round. Kind of make it a weird shape. All right, just like that. Now you can add some more layers to this, right? You could put another little ball of green stuff, and you could add more to this. Maybe throw that on there. If you're going to do this, then you need to police your oil quite a bit. Make sure that it's not too much, or it will not stick. So there we go. I'll just polish another little bit. I like the cup brush because then I can come in here and I can use the edge of it to tidy up in a circular pattern, whereas a square brush doesn't allow you to do that because it's square, right? But with this, I can swoop around like this and get that circle. There we go. Now I think that I'm going to, because it's Nurgle, let's add the three dots for his symbol, right? So right in the middle of the pupil, just go 1, 2, 3. Just for fun. We're just messing around, right? Now, I'm going to actually let that cure for a bit. In fact, I'm going to let it cure to completion, because now we're going to add the flesh over the eye, and we don't want to mess this up, right? So let that cure until it's all done, and then we'll move on to the fleshy bits, the eyelids. It's looking kind of good. I'm going to take my knife blade now with a little bit of oil, and I'm just going to stick the blade in towards the center. Just make little lines. If you look at eyeballs, you see how there's little lines, right? I'm just going to make these really subtle. Just really subtle. Okay. Now let's let this cure, and then we will add some fleshy bits like the eyelid and stuff. Now this has dried, and I have mixed up some green put. And we are going to make some of the tissue, some of the flesh around the outside of the eye. And once that's cured, you're just going to apply some material here to the outside of the eye. Okay, just bulk this up some. I have here some green put, and it's pretty thick, as you can see. Right, it's pretty thick. And I'm going to apply it in pieces like this, and I'm going to use my conical brushes so that I can really press down around this eyeball. All right, we're just building up the tissue. Now you could have done this with resin as well if you wanted to, right? But that's a lot of resin. That's a lot of resin. Now you can see that I'm using just a little bit of oil, not very much. And in fact, you probably want to use spit or water instead, because you're going to be adding to this eyeball, right? Let's take another slice of green put and just lay it down. Just a little bit of spit. We're going to be laying this tissue down around the eye, just like that. Just keep moving it around. And if you need to trim off some of this material, it's not a problem. Just a little bit of oil, just flick, there it goes. Okay? Just keep swinging around like that. Just keep laying it like that. Now you can see, eventually you're going to get to where that eye is flushed out enough. Be able to recognize when you've got enough, right? And if you want to do a whole face, you could. Just keep applying like this. The reason we're using a conical brush is because a flat brush, like this guy, would destroy these lips that we're trying to maintain here. Trying to maintain that to make it look like an opening, right? If we just use a flat brush, that's going to destroy that edge. The conical just avoids it completely and presses down where we need to. Just keep going in that circle. Right, just keep going. Just like that. Okay. And you can also use your pointy brush, pointy comb brush, and start moving in some lines here. All right, and if you find that your lines here have collapsed, see right there how it's kind of collapsed a little bit? You can get your knife, just get in there and peel that back, or you can use one of these cups. This is a very flexible cup. Get in here and just follow this around, pop that back up. You need to be cognizant of letting things dry first. You see how I just fixed that? But if this were not cured already, I would have messed that up. So doing things in stages really does help. You can also use a needle if you wanted to. There's plenty of ways to correct this. I'm going to use a needle here to try and get some folds going in here, right? And once I've made them very, very hard, I'm going to soften them by drawing them out with a soft brush, just like that. Okay. I'm going to take my conical brush here, flip this over, and we're going to take this lid and overlap that lid. Just a little bit, just a little bit. See that? You can make this eye very mad, you know, you could make it mad, you can make it surprised, you can make it sleepy. Just adding these slabs in half circles, just one over the other and one over the other until you build up around the eye. You really build that flesh around the eye. Okay. Now, you see how this lid has overlapped this one a little bit? I'm gonna go with that. Go with that just a little bit. Now, if I were to let this cure for a little while, I would be able to really start working in the wrinkles and the folds. Okay, and I would really be able to work this little corner here that I really like that detail. We can also texture this material, right? So if we wanted to come out here, this is a whetstone used for sharpening tools. It's got a little bit of texture, put a little bit of mineral oil on it. Texture like that. Now this lid right here, I need a little bit more material because it has started to collapse in. So what I'm going to do is just do a little slice like this. Lick my thumb so that I don't stick to the material. And we're just going to lay this over like that. Oops. Like that. Okay. Come in here. A little bit of oil. And remember I'm using a conical. See this conical pointed brush? Because again, it doesn't have sharp edges that will ruin this top lip. We need to preserve that lip. There's a nice little wrinkle here I think I'm going to encourage. I'm just going to follow that like that. I'm going to wrap this sucker around. Okay? Let's get this guy. Oh, that's going to move it too much. Too rigid. We'll go medium. Medium rigidity here on the brush so that it doesn't move the material so much. It flexes a little bit, gives us a little bit to work with here. Doing this under the camera is difficult. All right, what I'm going to do is pull this skin away from the eye a little bit because I'm going to use resin later to create kind of like a weeping tear, like it's pus filled, you know? That'll be kind of nice and gross. I'm going to work this eye, just keep working in my details like this, my folds and such. But I'm going to keep working this as this cures. This is going to be, you know, like 2 hours, maybe an hour and a half or something, probably 2, for it to actually cure. So throughout that time, I'm going to be refining it, putting lines in where I want them, sharpening up the detail. And you see how I get in here with this tool and just this knife and just pull the skin away from the eye? I'm going to actually go a little bit further, get my soft conical tip. We're going to get in here and we're going to lift this away from the eye like it's really sagging, like that. Okay, and what that does is that opens up the eye. It makes it look really saggy, really gross. We're going to droop it like this. What do you think? Yeah, I like that. Not as much the top one. Gravity is making this saggy flesh droop, right? What this is going to do is not only does that look good, but it also opens up a lot of possibility for weeping grossness, right? Okay, I'm going to keep working in some detail and some wrinkles, and I will show you some footage, and then we will wrap this video up. So this has now been curing for about an hour, and the epoxy is starting to get to where I can press in those defined, really hard lines. So I'm going to press hard at the tip, and then I can soften it out. But I can mostly use my hard tools now. Well, mostly. All right, we're going to draw out that little detail there. I'm going to pull this lid down a little bit more over here as well. Okay, I'm pretty happy with the eye as it is, but let's add a little bit more grossness. All right, I'm going to grab some of my ball pokies, little ball styluses, and we're just going to open up some 3 dots for Nurgle. Okay, 3 dots. Maybe 2 over here, maybe a couple over here. Let's do 3 over here. And what we're doing essentially is we're going to be making pockmarks and then adding in some pus-filled boils afterwards. Okay, so let's just add in some detail here. We can also take our needle and just start hitting this with some texture if we wanted to, right? Just some texture. We can get our stone as well. Once we have those boils pressed in, we can rotate the stylus just like this. Make them bigger. They don't all have to be the same size. Definitely don't put them in the same spot. Now we can roll up little tiny balls like this. We can get them on our brush. We stick them in the little pockets we've made. Just like that. See that? I'm going to continue doing that throughout the rest of them. That's good enough. Not all of the pockmarks need to be filled with boils, right? Some of them have already popped. Ugh. But I do like the idea of going around the pustules and texturing with the needle a little bit. So let's show you that. So we'll just kind of get in here. We're going to kind of define how this is the symbol of Nurgle, right? With these clusters of pockmarks. Gross. All right, I'm going to put a few more little lines in here, just like that. And then we are going to use some resin, and I hope this doesn't ruin it. This is all experimental. This is the first time I'm doing any of this, so yeah, I hope I don't ruin it. I'm just going to go in here and kind of lift some last minute stuff, do some lines, and then we're going to put in some resin and make some goop. All right. As an added bonus, you can do little worms like that. All you do is just take a little slice like that, just roll it into a worm, and then you're gonna take your needle, stab it with the tip, and then stab the tip into a little hole, fix it in there, and you can move the worm around however you'd like. Just make him grow. Sometimes they get a little fiddly, so you want to use use your tweezers. If you want to use your tweezers too, you can just grab it like that and move it. But this has been curing for about an hour 20 minutes, so it's much easier to use. If this were fresh, it'd be collapsing in on itself. So remember your cure times, guys. Okay, let's give this a try. So we've got some resin here, and I'm just going to let that sink like that. Hit that. A little bit more, like that. I'm gonna hold it like this. You can't really see, but I need gravity to help me here. There we go. A little more. All right, how about that? That's pretty gross, right? Good thing is you could paint this up and then use this resin and just add this. It's like a sickly yellow color already. And you could use this for mucus. Now there is obviously technical paints out there already that would help you do this. But this resin really coming in handy. Do a big old glob here. There we go. That's pretty cool. And of course, if you are wanting to do little tiny warts, you can also just tap, tap, tap with the resin, and just do little bumps here and there, little growths. All right. Have a little bit of sickness along here as well. Ooh, nice. I'm gonna add just a little bit over here. Starting to get to where I'm thinking it might be too much. Oops. Mop that out. That was too much. I'll lose my detail there. And there we go, our very sickly eye. I think it turned out pretty darn good for the first attempt. Pretty happy with that. Tell me what you think, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. And if you have any questions, get a hold of me on the Discord or Instagram, and not the Patreon, because Patreon sucks for messaging. Thanks so much, guys, for the support. Hope you enjoyed it.